Hey everybody, it is your professor, your programming friend, and your dog sled operator. And today we're gonna start talking about HTML. We're gonna actually learn the language of programming. So let's get started. So HTML is the first coding language we're gonna learn because it is the skeleton, the bones of everything that you see on the internet. Again, when we have the words HTML, those stand for Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext just meaning that the internet is a series of tubes and a series of pages that link to each other. So every website is just a bunch of pages that link to other pages. And markup language means that you are annotating all of the text and stuff that is inside of the website. So you're telling the computer, hey, this little bit's a paragraph, and this little bit's a title, and this little bit is an image. So everything that you're putting in there, you're saying, you're labeling it for what it is so the computer can know what it is and know what to do with it. Which explains the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is tags. So the way that you annotate all of your items inside of the document is that you have the thing that you want, and then you embrace it, you give it a little hug with its tag, with the annotation. So here I have the words hello world, and I'm telling the computer that this is a paragraph. And the way that I'm doing that is I'm using these tags, the P tag, P for paragraph, and I have an opening tag at the beginning and a closing tag at the end, so that it knows exactly how long that paragraph is. We call this whole thing together, the content plus the opening and closing tags, an element. We call these things at the beginning and the end tags. And the one at the beginning is the opening tag and the end is the closing tag. And you know the difference between an opening and a closing tag because a closing one is at the end, but also has this backslash too. So it's the same as the front, but you add that backslash to the beginning of these little brackety things. And then the thing that you have in between each of those tags is referred to as the content. And this is just so when you're reading up on stuff, you know what people are referring to. Okay, so this is something that you will see a lot. This is what it will look like when you actually have your HTML document. You'll have an empty blank page, and inside of it, you'll have these tags that are around the content. When you have the things that are visible on your page, they'll be between these two body tags. So what body does as a tag is it says, hey, everything between these two tags is visible on the website. So when you have an opening body tag, you say everything below here, be visible, be something someone can see on the internet. And then you have that closing tag to be, this is the end of the visible content. And the reason you have that is because you have some content that you don't want people to see. It's called meta content. And this meta stuff is things that like Google search uses or Twitter uses to show an image when someone links to your page, or the icon that goes up in the tab. Like those aren't things that you need to see on the website, but are things that the computer needs to know. So that's what the body tags are doing. And then inside that body tag, I put my paragraph because I want people to read that paragraph. When you have something inside of something else, you will do a tab. So you can see how I have this negative space before the paragraph. So you tab in once, and that shows that it is a child of that other element that is nested inside. So here I have my body, and then inside between those tags, I have this paragraph element, and I've tabbed it over, and I can refer now to this as a child element. And the reason why we do this tab is because negative space in HTML documents and also CSS documents helps us keep track of everything. So we know that this is inside of this. And so we can very quickly look at the page and see what's nested in other stuff. A grandchild is when something is nested inside of something and then something is nested inside of that. So you can have things inside of other things all the way down. It's turtles all the way down. Div here, I'll talk about divs later. This is a child of body because it's inside of it, and then because it has something inside of it, this is the grandchild. And because these are on the same level, they're both inside of this other thing, they're referred to as siblings. So again, just some terminology to make it easy to keep track of what other people are talking about or stuff you're reading. So we've talked about the paragraph element and the body element, but now we're talking about headings, which are also used for text. So you've seen headings before. Anytime you're working in like Microsoft Word, and you've probably made them in InDesign, headings are just different types of text that have different hierarchies. So inside of HTML, you have 6 different hierarchies that you can set up that are just built in to the HTML language. You'll use these for headlines, titles, subtitles. The headings are just used to create hierarchy, H1, H2, H3, hierarchy 1, 2, 3. So H1, heading 1, is the highest in the hierarchy. It is the main heading. Every single HTML document that you have should have an H1 in it, because you want people to know that because there's always going to be a most important thing on the page, and so you should always have an H1. The other ones you can use as needed. So if you have other text that isn't as important as the title, but is more important than the paragraph stuff, like say an author's name or a subtitle or what have you, you could use H2, H3, H4, and as the numbers get larger, you're going lower on the hierarchy. And so this is what it would look like on your website. H1 would be super huge, and then H2 would be a little smaller, and then H3 might be smaller and bold, and so on and so forth, so that you have a visual hierarchy to go along with this hierarchy that you've told the computer. Every browser is going to have its built-in styling. It comes default with some default stylings, and so when you say H1, Google or Firefox or whatever you're using will say, okay, here's our styling for most important thing, second most important thing, and so on. And so if you just say H1, the computer, the browser knows, okay, make this huge. You can also do more than just the headings. You can annotate paragraph text to be more specific in what certain parts of a paragraph means. So when you have a paragraph, you'll use that paragraph tag, but then inside of that, you can annotate individual phrases or words or what have you. You've probably seen them before. This is the basic HTML editing. So if you ever went into like the back end HTML of some sort of social media profile, if you ever like published, I don't know, writing on the internet and you wanted to make something bold, you've probably come across these tags before. So inside of the paragraph text, you would find the word that you want to change the tone of, and you would put these other tags around them. So the first ones I want to talk about are I and EM. EM is short for emphasis. So that means that you're saying these words have a different tone to them. So if someone is saying, is like exasperated and they have a hard emphasis on something, you can add EM around it, and you're telling the computer there's a different tone of voice. There's a strength to the tone that is being used for this one word. And so it can be read differently. I visually does the same thing. So both EM and I will both make something italics visually in HTML by default, but semantically they mean different things. So when you have I, you're generally doing something that is more grammar oriented, like you're saying this is the name of a play or a person or a location, and so it should be italics to indicate that it is a name of something. So EM references tone of voice, and I references like a proper noun inside of the paragraph. And so you just put the opening and closing tags, EM, and then EM with a slash at the end, in order to change that, to let the computer know that this word is different. And you can do this around multiple words too. The other ones are strong and B. So again, these will visually do the same thing, but they are telling different things to the computer. So strong means that something has a higher hierarchy than the rest of the paragraph text. And so this has often things to do with safety. So like if you're going into a wood shop, please put on your goggles first. You could put strong around, put on goggles first. And so someone reading it would know this is more important than the rest of the stuff. Like this actually has something to do with your safety. Versus B, which also makes the text bold, but all that is doing is sort of highlighting the words. So if someone is like skim reading it, they at least know the basic input because these things are bolded. So it's meant to make things stand out, to highlight, but they're not necessarily more important than the rest of the text. They aren't hierarchically there, but if you're going to skim read it, you might as well get these two things. So B is probably the most confusing of those. But the reason why you have two things, E, M, and I, and strong and B, that visually look the same on the computer, but mean different things, is because in CSS, you can change up these stylings to be whatever you want. These are just the defaults. And this is meant for people who are using screen readers. So when the computer comes in and reads these to people who aren't accessing your website visually, they're hearing it instead using a screen reader, the computer software that is translating it will know the difference between these two things. So that's what I mean by semantics. You're saying what the function or purpose of these things is, and that's more important than how it looks, because that's going to go into more of the accessibility issues and the styling issues later on. So even though this seems arbitrary, make sure you actually use them correctly for their semantic purposes. The other one I want to talk about is line breaks. So space is weird in HTML. If you go into the document and you actually like put something on a new line, or you add a whole bunch of spaces to it, HTML is going to ignore it. It does not care about your negative space, it does not care about your indentation. It will make everything one long run-on line if it's between two tags. If you have a new paragraph, it'll put the new paragraph on the next line. As soon as you put like a new opening tag at the beginning, it'll make a new line. But if you have just one long paragraph, it's just going to make one long sentence. It's not going to break it ever. So if you have one long paragraph and you want to do a line break, you have to add this in. This is our first tag that only has an opening tag. So it just is BR with these little brackets around it, and that will tell the computer to put it on a new line. So here's an example. Here, this is one really long sentence inside one paragraph. And so instead of just making another paragraph, I'm just going to put a little line break here, because I feel like this, I mean, it's all one paragraph. It's just, I want it to visually, I think visually it will look better if I have a line break in there. So I add BR, and in the computer, it'll break like this. Okay, so we're going to do our homework exercise. This is our second homework exercise, but this is the first one we're actually doing some coding in it. So I'm going to walk you through how to get started. First, we need to go onto Canvas and find the exercise for today. So I'll go to my student view. Okay, and I'm going to go to homework assignment for video 2. And you need to click on this link here, and that's going to open up your Glitch account. And it's going to bring you to the template that you're going to use. And then you're going to come up here and you're going to hit Remix. This will allow you to edit it on your own account without modifying the original one. We'll give it a second. Okay. I'm going to go up to Settings, and I'm going to rename this just so... Edit project details. I'm going to rename it. Hit save. Oh, my bad. Okay. All right, so now I have it named. I have my own version of this file, and I'm going to start editing. Make sure that you're logged into your account, because if you're not, you can still edit, but it will only save it for 2 weeks. So if I click on it when I'm grading it, it's going to show me a broken page. So make sure that you are logged into your account so that it will save to your account. Okay. And then the next thing that I want to do is these things. So I want to put opening and closing H1 tags around the title text. So here, inside of my code, I've added some comments. I'll tell you how to do comments later, but they look like this. So it's easier for you to figure out where I'm telling you to put tags. But the title is going to be Every Sonic Game is Blasphemous. And so to make some tags, I'm just going to go put my cursor at the beginning of this text, do the left pointy bracket, and say H1. So H1 says this is the most important thing on the page. When you're coding, this automatic, the glitch will be like really nice and really helpful and automatically create a closing tag for you because it knows H1 needs a closing tag. So instead of making you do one, it will automatically complete it. The downside is I've already given you the text, so it'll just like shove it out of the way. So to fix that, we'll just cut and paste. It is actually a nice function when you're not doing tutorials. It's just kind of annoying right now. So now you can see I've put H1 at the beginning and /H1 at the end. And the title over here is now huge. And I haven't put any styling to it. We don't even have a CSS document over here. This is just the default styling that comes with Chrome. I'm in Chrome right now. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to put an H2 tag around my subtitle. Okay. So back in my code, I can see here I've said that below here is the subtitle. And so I'm going to add an H2 tag to say this is the next most important text, H2. And then put my text between these opening and closing tags. Okay, excellent. And so now you can see that this one is a little bit smaller and also bold. The next thing I want to do is to add my paragraph tag at the beginning of my paragraph and a closing paragraph tag around the end of my paragraph. So I'll go back here. This is the beginning of my paragraph, so I'm going to put left pointy bracket, P, and pointy bracket. It's given me this closing tag, so I'll just cut and paste it down here at the end of the text. Okay, and you can see that I've added some breaks to this like long sentence here, just because visually it was like going on and I couldn't see it anymore. But over here you can see in the preview of my website that it's still one long sentence. It hasn't done any breaks, even though I have breaks over here. And if I were to like add some negative space, it doesn't care. It's going to ignore all of that space. So I have to manually put in where I want that space to be. Just put this over here. Okay. All right, so now we're gonna add in some annotation into our paragraph text. So I'm going to put I tags around Sonic the Hedgehog because that's a name. So I want to properly annotate that name. I'll go back to my code and find the words Sonic the Hedgehog, that's right here. So I'm going to, at the beginning, do pointy, I, pointy, and then move that closing tag to the end of hedgehog. There we go. I might sneeze. Nope, as soon as I said it, it went away. Okay. And then I'm going to put a strong tag around don't miss this because that's a call to action. It's important. It's more important than the rest of the text. So I'm going to put strong around it. So back in my text, oh, I didn't edit it. Uh-oh. Okay, you're going to have this in here because I'm going to edit it. Behind the scenes, pretend you didn't see that. Okay, so you will already have this text here because I'm going to edit the original file. So around this, you're going to put strong and then move this ending tag to the end of don't miss this. There you go. Ooh, that was actually a good example of what happens when you don't close tags. So if you've ever like been reading something on the internet and there's an italics and then it just goes italics forever, it's because they forgot to put a closing tag on it. And so it'll just make the rest of it bold. Put that back. So if you've ever seen that error, that's what's going on. All right, and then we're going to put an emphasis tag around completely because I want them to hear that tone of voice. So here's the word completely. So I want them to hear like, it's completely wrong. And so to do that, I'm going to do EM bracket, and then move it to the end of the word completely. There we go. All right. And then we're going to add a B tag around click here to learn more, because I want to bold it, but it's not necessarily more important. I just don't want them to miss it. I want to highlight this section. So I'm going to go in, click here to learn more is right here. B, and then backslash B at the end. And I have two closing tags right next to each other, and that's totally fine. One is just closing the B, and one is closing the paragraph. And then finally, I want to put click here to learn more on a new line. So again, that's the tag BR. So I can put that here, BR. And that's one that doesn't have a closing tag, so only the BR. And you can see now it has jumped from right here to down to the next line. And if I wanted to give it more space, I could do BR. Don't actually do that. I'm going to teach you how to create additional negative space above paragraphs. So don't do like BR, BR. But if you want to, before we learn CSS, that's one way to do it. It's not a good way once you know CSS. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to do for the homework. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So for the homework, again, all you have to do is go into the homework file, find this link, add H1, H2. No, maybe zoom in on this real quick. Yeah. Add a paragraph at the beginning and the end, add I, add EM, add strong, add a break, add B, and you're all good. You're good to go. You've made your first HTML file. So when you're done and it looks like this, you can go up and hit share and then go to where it says code. Do the code one because I'm looking at your code. If you send me the live site, all I'm going to see is this right side here. So make sure you send me your code, copy it, go back into the homework assignment, and submit that link to here to homework assignment for video 2. And do that before the beginning of next class. I hope that made sense. If it was confusing, shoot me an email, let me know. And next class, we're going to review these principles in an exercise. I hope you had a good weekend and see you around. Bye.